Okay, so Donald Trump is in full meltdown mode right now, and this time it's not just another lawsuit or another judge ruling against him. This is Judge Juan Merchan officially upholding the guilty verdict in Trump's New York criminal case, and the sitting president of the United States is absolutely losing it. We're talking about a president who, right now in January 2026, is juggling a federal government, international crises, negotiations with Congress, and a re-election campaign that's already heating up. And he just got hit with a judicial decision that could reshape his entire second term. This isn't some minor procedural setback. This is a sitting president with a criminal conviction that a judge just refused to overturn. And the political, legal, and constitutional fallout is massive. Trump is trashing Judge Merchan publicly, calling the decision rigged, calling the system corrupt, and basically declaring war on the New York judiciary while he's supposed to be running the country. And here's the thing. This decision doesn't just affect Trump personally. It affects the presidency itself, the 2026 midterms, the Republican Party's midterm strategy, Trump's negotiating power with Congress, his credibility with international allies, and the entire narrative around whether a sitting president can govern effectively while fighting multiple legal battles. This is unprecedented territory, and the White House is scrambling to contain the damage while Trump himself is on social media, firing off attacks that are making his own legal team nervous. Now, before we dive into exactly what Judge Merchan ruled and why this is such a catastrophic moment for Trump's presidency, let's talk about something important. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. They're going to spin this story a dozen different ways depending on who owns the network and what their agenda is. Some outlets will downplay it, some will sensationalize it, and most will miss the bigger institutional and constitutional implications of what's happening here. That's exactly why we built US Power Alert, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. We break down the power dynamics, the legal mechanisms, the political strategies, and the long-term consequences that the mainstream press either ignores or doesn't understand. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines and actually understand what's happening in Washington, at the Supreme Court, in federal courts, and in the backrooms where real power is being fought over, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. We bring the news straight to you every single day, and we do it without the filter of corporate interests or partisan talking points. Just hit the subscribe button below to join us. And if you want to support this work and be part of a community that truly cares about the truth and understands that politics is about power, institutions, and accountability, this is your moment. Subscribe, drop a comment with your thoughts on this ruling, and let us know if you think Judge Merchan made the right call or if you think this is political persecution of a sitting president. Here's what happened. Judge Juan Merchan, the New York State Supreme Court judge who presided over Donald Trump's criminal trial in 2024, just issued a ruling that officially upholds the guilty verdict against Trump on all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. This is the hush money case. The case involving payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign. Payments that prosecutors argued were part of a scheme to illegally influence the election by hiding damaging information from voters. Trump was convicted by a jury back in May 2024, before he won the November election and returned to the White House. But after Trump won and was inaugurated in January 2025, his legal team immediately filed motions to have the conviction overturned or at least delayed indefinitely, arguing that you can't sentence a sitting president, that the case was politically motivated, and that the Supreme Court's recent ruling on presidential immunity should apply retroactively to actions Trump took while he was president the first time, or even as a candidate. They threw everything at the wall, arguing constitutional immunity, arguing that the prosecution was election interference, arguing that the evidence was tainted, arguing that the jury was biased, and arguing that sentencing a sitting president would interfere with his ability to govern and would violate the separation of powers. Basically, Trump's lawyers were saying, he's the president now. You can't touch him. This conviction has to be paused or thrown out entirely. And Judge Merchan just said no. In a detailed written opinion, Merchan ruled that the guilty verdict stands, that the conviction is valid, that Trump's arguments about presidential immunity don't apply, because the conduct in question occurred before Trump was president the first time and involved private actions unrelated to official presidential duties, and that there is no constitutional barrier to maintaining a criminal conviction against a sitting president, even if sentencing might be delayed. Merchan didn't sentence Trump yet. He acknowledged that sentencing a sitting president raises unique constitutional questions, and said he would delay the sentencing hearing until Trump's term ends, or until appellate courts provide further guidance. But he made it absolutely clear. The conviction is real. The jury verdict is valid. Donald Trump is a convicted felon under New York state law, and that status does not disappear just because he won an election and is now sitting in the Oval Office. Merchan wrote that Trump's argument that he is immune from state criminal prosecution because he is president is not supported by the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, which dealt with official acts taken while in office, not private conduct before taking office. He wrote that allowing a president to overturn a jury verdict simply because he won an election would undermine the rule of law and create a system where political success grants legal immunity. And he wrote that the people of New York, through a jury, found Trump guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and that verdict deserves to be respected regardless of Trump's current position. Now, Trump's reaction was immediate and volcanic. Within hours of the ruling being released, Trump was on Truth Social, calling Judge Merchan a corrupt, biased hack, calling the case the greatest witch hunt in American history, and saying that the ruling proves the justice system is rigged against him. He attacked Merchan personally. He attacked Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. He attacked the New York courts, and he suggested that the ruling was timed to hurt him politically as he heads into the 2026 midterm campaign season. Trump posted that he is the victim of political persecution by radical left judges and prosecutors who are trying to destroy me because they can't beat me at the ballot box. He called the conviction illegitimate. He said the trial was unfair, and he vowed to fight the ruling all the way to the Supreme Court. He also hinted, in a very Trumpian way, that this ruling is part of a broader effort by his enemies to weaken his presidency and distract from his accomplishments. And here's where it gets politically explosive. Trump is using this ruling as a rallying cry for his base, framing himself as a martyr being attacked by a corrupt system, and turning Judge Merchan into a symbol of everything his supporters believe is wrong with the legal establishment. But here's the problem, and this is where the White House panic mode kicks in. Trump is not just a political candidate anymore. He is the sitting president of the United States in January 2026. He is in the middle of governing. He is negotiating with Congress on budget deals. He is managing foreign policy crises. He is dealing with economic challenges. And he is preparing for midterm elections that could determine whether he has any legislative power for the second half of his term. And now, he has a criminal conviction hanging over his head that Judge Merchan just validated. That conviction doesn't go away. It's not paused. It's not under review. It's official. Trump is a convicted felon, and that fact is now a permanent part of his presidency. And while Merchan delayed sentencing, the conviction itself creates a massive political and legal vulnerability that Trump's opponents are going to exploit relentlessly. Democrats are already talking about how a convicted felon is sitting in the Oval Office. Legal experts are debating whether Trump can be sentenced while in office, or whether that has to wait until he leaves. Constitutional scholars are arguing about whether a sitting president with a criminal conviction can fully exercise executive authority, or whether that conviction undermines his legitimacy. And Trump's own legal team is in damage control mode, trying to figure out how to appeal this ruling, how to keep the case out of the headlines, and how to prevent this from becoming a defining narrative of Trump's second term. And it gets worse. The timing of this ruling is catastrophic for Trump politically. We are heading into the 2026 midterm elections. Those elections are going to determine control of the House and Senate, and they are going to be a referendum on Trump's second term. Republicans are already nervous because Trump's approval ratings are shaky, because his first year back in office has been chaotic, and because Democrats are highly motivated to take back Congress and block Trump's agenda. Now, Democrats have a gift-wrapped talking point. The president is a convicted felon. They're going to use that in every single campaign ad, every debate, every speech. They're going to argue that Trump is unfit to lead, that he is a criminal who conned his way back into power, and that voters need to send a message by electing a Democratic Congress to hold him accountable. And here's the thing. This isn't just a political attack. It's a fact. A jury convicted Trump. A judge upheld that conviction. Trump can call it a witch hunt all he wants, but the legal reality is that he was found guilty of 34 felonies, and that conviction is now part of the public record. That's going to hurt Trump with independents, with suburban voters, with women voters, and with anyone who is on the fence about whether Trump deserves another chance. Republicans who are trying to win in swing districts are going to have to answer for this. They're going to have to explain why they're supporting a convicted felon for president. And some of them are already quietly panicking because they know this is a nightmare scenario for their own re-elections. Now, let's talk about the legal and constitutional mechanism here, because this is important. Trump's lawyers argued that the Supreme Court's recent ruling on presidential immunity, which said that presidents have broad immunity for official acts taken while in office, should apply to this case and should overturn the conviction. But Judge Merchan, and pretty much every legal expert who isn't on Trump's payroll, says that argument is nonsense. Here's why. The Supreme Court's immunity ruling dealt with actions a president takes as president. Things like ordering military strikes, issuing executive orders, making personnel decisions, conducting diplomacy. Those are official acts, and the court said presidents can't be prosecuted for those acts because it would interfere with their ability to govern. But the conduct Trump was convicted for, falsifying business records to cover up hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, happened in 2016 and 2017, before Trump was president the first time. Those were private actions. They were not official presidential duties. They were not acts of governance. They were personal decisions made by Trump as a private citizen and a candidate, and they involved hiding information from voters during a campaign. That is not covered by presidential immunity. The Supreme Court's ruling doesn't protect private conduct. It doesn't protect crimes committed before taking office. And it definitely doesn't give presidents a free pass for criminal behavior that has nothing to do with their official responsibilities. Judge Merchan made this point very clearly in his ruling. He said the immunity doctrine is designed to protect the functioning of the presidency, not to shield presidents from accountability for personal misconduct. He said Trump's argument that he should be immune from state prosecution because he is now president would create a system where winning an election erases criminal liability, and that would be a disaster for the rule of law. Merchan wrote that if Trump's argument were accepted, any president could commit crimes, get convicted, and then run for office again, knowing that a conviction would be overturned the moment they won. That would make the presidency a get-out-of-jail-free card, and it would turn elections into a tool for avoiding accountability. Merchan also pointed out that the New York conviction is a state conviction, not a federal one, and that state courts have the authority to prosecute and convict individuals for violations of state law, even if those individuals later become president. The Constitution doesn't give presidents immunity from state criminal law for conduct that occurred before they took office. And while Merchan acknowledged that sentencing a sitting president raises complicated questions, he said those questions don't erase the conviction itself. The jury found Trump guilty. The evidence supported that verdict. And that verdict stands. Now, here's where this becomes a lot bigger than just Trump's legal problems. This ruling sets a precedent. It establishes that presidents are not above the law for conduct that occurred before they took office. It establishes that state courts can convict presidents for state crimes. And it establishes that winning an election does not grant immunity from criminal prosecution. That's a huge deal. It means that future presidents, if they commit crimes before taking office, can be prosecuted, convicted, and held accountable. It means that the presidency is not a shield from the justice system, and it means that voters have to take seriously the criminal history and legal vulnerabilities of candidates they elect. This ruling is going to be cited for decades. It's going to be taught in law schools, and it's going to shape how we think about presidential accountability in the 21st century. But in the short term, it's a political and legal nightmare for Donald Trump, and it's a gift to his opponents. Okay, let's break down what this actually means because the implications here are massive and they stretch across multiple dimensions of American politics and governance. First, understand that Trump is now governing as a convicted felon. That is not a talking point. That is a legal fact. He was convicted by a jury of his peers. A judge has upheld that conviction. And while he hasn't been sentenced yet, the conviction itself is official. That creates a constitutional and political crisis because we have never had a sitting president with a criminal conviction. We've had presidents who were impeached. We've had presidents who resigned in disgrace. We've had presidents who were accused of crimes but never convicted. But we have never had a president who was actually found guilty in a court of law and then continued to serve as president. That raises all sorts of questions. Can a convicted felon exercise the full powers of the presidency? Can he pardon himself for federal crimes? Can he be trusted with classified information? Can he credibly negotiate with foreign leaders? Can he command the respect of the military, the intelligence community, and federal law enforcement? These are not hypothetical questions. They are real questions that judges, members of Congress, military officials, and the American public are asking right now. Second, this ruling obliterates Trump's legal strategy of delay and dismissal. Trump's entire approach to his legal problems has been to delay, delay, delay. Delay trials until after the election. Delay sentencing until he's back in office. Delay appeals until his legal team can find a friendly court or a sympathetic judge. The strategy was to run out the clock, to use the election as a shield, and to hope that winning the presidency would make his legal problems go away. And for a while, that strategy worked. Trump won the 2024 election. He got back into the White House. And his lawyers immediately started arguing that he should be immune from prosecution and that his convictions should be overturned because he's president. But Judge Merchan just blew up that strategy. He said, no, the conviction stands, Trump is guilty, and being president doesn't change that. Yes, Merchan delayed sentencing, but the conviction itself is final unless an appellate court overturns it. And that's a long shot because the evidence was strong and the jury verdict was solid. So Trump is stuck. He can't make this go away. He can't delay it indefinitely. And he can't claim immunity. He is a convicted felon, and that status is now permanent unless he wins on appeal, which legal experts say is unlikely. Third, this destroys Trump's narrative of victimhood and persecution. Trump has spent years telling his supporters that he is being unfairly targeted by a corrupt justice system, that the charges against him are fake, that the prosecutors are biased, and that the whole thing is a political witch hunt. And to be fair, a lot of his supporters believe that. They think Trump is being persecuted because the establishment fears him. But here's the problem. Judge Merchan didn't just issue a partisan ruling. He issued a detailed, legally sound opinion that explains exactly why Trump's conviction is valid and why his arguments for immunity don't hold up. Merchan cited Supreme Court precedent. He cited constitutional principles. He cited the evidence from the trial. And he made it very clear that Trump was convicted because the jury found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, not because of some political conspiracy. That's going to be hard for Trump to spin. He can call Merchan corrupt all he wants, but the judge's ruling is based on law, not politics. And that undermines Trump's ability to claim he's a victim. It makes him look like a criminal who is trying to use his political power to escape accountability. Fourth, this is a massive gift to Democrats heading into the 2026 midterms. Democrats were already planning to run on Trump's chaos, his extremism, and his threat to democracy. Now they have a concrete, undeniable fact to build their campaign around. The president is a convicted felon. That is going to be in every ad, every debate, every speech. Democrats are going to argue that Trump is unfit to lead, that he is a danger to the rule of law, and that voters need to elect a Democratic Congress to hold him accountable and to block his agenda. And here's the thing. This message is going to resonate with independents and moderate Republicans who are already uncomfortable with Trump. A lot of voters gave Trump a second chance in 2024 because they thought the economy was bad under Biden or because they didn't like Kamala Harris. But those voters are not hardcore MAGA. They are persuadable. And the idea of a convicted felon sitting in the Oval Office is going to make a lot of them think twice about supporting Republicans in the midterms. Democrats are going to hammer this message relentlessly, and it's going to work in swing districts and swing states. Fifth, this creates chaos inside the Republican Party. Republicans are already divided between Trump loyalists who will defend him no matter what, and more traditional conservatives who are uncomfortable with Trump's legal problems and his chaotic governing style. Now, those traditional conservatives, the ones trying to win in suburban districts, are going to have to answer for the fact that their party's leader is a convicted felon. Some of them are going to try to distance themselves from Trump. Some of them are going to defend him reluctantly, and some of them are going to break with him entirely. That division is going to hurt Republican chances in the midterms, and it's going to make it harder for Trump to govern because he won't have unified support from his own party. You're already seeing cracks. Some Republican senators are quietly saying they wish Trump would stop tweeting about the case. Some House Republicans in swing districts are refusing to comment. And some conservative legal scholars are saying that Judge Merchan's ruling is correct and that Trump's conviction should stand. That's not a united front. That's a party in chaos. Sixth, this has massive implications for Trump's relationship with the justice system and with federal law enforcement. Trump has already been attacking the FBI, the Justice Department, and federal prosecutors as part of a deep state conspiracy against him. Now, with a state judge upholding his conviction, Trump is going to escalate those attacks. He's going to claim that the entire justice system, state and federal, is rigged against him, and that's going to create a crisis of legitimacy. If the President of the United States is openly declaring war on the courts and on law enforcement, how can those institutions function? How can judges issue rulings without fearing retaliation? How can prosecutors bring cases without being accused of political persecution? This is a direct threat to the independence of the judiciary, and it's a direct threat to the rule of law. And it's happening right now, in real time, as Trump governs as a convicted felon and attacks the judge who convicted him. Seventh, this raises serious questions about Trump's ability to govern effectively. The presidency is a demanding job. It requires focus, credibility, and the ability to work with other branches of government. Trump is now juggling a criminal conviction, multiple ongoing legal battles, a hostile Congress that might flip Democratic in the midterms, international crises, economic challenges, and a re-election campaign. That's an impossible workload, and something is going to break. Trump is going to be distracted by his legal problems. He's going to spend time attacking judges and prosecutors instead of focusing on policy. And he's going to lose credibility with allies, with Congress, and with the American public. You can already see it happening. Trump's approval ratings are shaky. His legislative agenda is stalled, and his foreign policy is a mess because allies don't trust him and adversaries don't fear him. A criminal conviction doesn't make any of that better. It makes it worse. Eighth, this sets up a potential constitutional crisis over sentencing. Judge Merchan delayed sentencing, but he didn't say sentencing will never happen. He said it might be delayed until Trump's term ends or until appellate courts provide guidance. But what happens if appellate courts say that sentencing can proceed? What happens if Merchan schedules a sentencing hearing in 2027 or 2028 while Trump is still president? Can a sitting president be sentenced to prison? Can a judge order a sitting president to serve probation or pay fines? What if Trump refuses to comply? What if he claims that sentencing a sitting president violates the Constitution? These are questions that have never been answered because we've never had a convicted felon as president, and they're going to have to be answered soon. And the answers could redefine the limits of presidential power and the separation of powers. Ninth, this is going to affect Trump's credibility on the world stage. Foreign leaders are watching this. Allies are watching this. Adversaries are watching this. And they are asking themselves, can we trust a president who is a convicted felon? Can we negotiate with him? Can we rely on his commitments? Can we take him seriously? The answer for a lot of them is no. European leaders are already skeptical of Trump. They remember his first term when he attacked NATO, pulled out of international agreements, and cozied up to authoritarians. Now, they see him as a convicted criminal, and that makes them even less willing to work with him. The same is true for allies in Asia and the Middle East and in Latin America. They see Trump's legal problems as a sign of weakness, and they're adjusting their strategies accordingly. Adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran are also taking note. They see Trump as distracted and vulnerable, and they're testing him. That's dangerous. It means that the United States is weaker on the world stage because our president is fighting legal battles instead of focusing on foreign policy. 10th, this is going to dominate the news cycle for weeks, if not months. Every time Trump attacks Judge Merchan, every time his lawyers file a new appeal, every time Democrats use the conviction in a campaign ad, this story is going to be back in the headlines. That's good for Democrats because it keeps Trump's legal problems front and center. It's bad for Republicans because it distracts from their policy agenda and makes the party look like it's defending a criminal. And it's bad for Trump because it keeps him on the defensive and prevents him from controlling the narrative. Trump thrives when he can set the agenda and force everyone to talk about what he wants to talk about. But when the agenda is his criminal conviction, he loses that advantage. He's reacting, not leading. And that's a losing position. Now, let's talk about what happens next, because this story is far from over. Trump's legal team is going to appeal Judge Merchan's ruling. They're going to ask a New York appellate court to overturn the conviction or at least to pause it while the appeal is pending. And if they lose there, they're going to take the case to the New York Court of Appeals, which is the state's highest court. And if they lose there, they're going to try to get the U.S. Supreme Court to take the case. Trump's lawyers are going to argue that the conviction violates the Constitution, that it interferes with Trump's ability to govern, and that state courts don't have the authority to prosecute sitting presidents. But here's the problem. Most legal experts think those arguments are weak. The Supreme Court's immunity ruling doesn't apply to private conduct before taking office. The Constitution doesn't grant sitting presidents immunity from state prosecution for crimes committed before they were president. And federal courts have historically been reluctant to interfere with state criminal cases unless there's a clear constitutional violation. So Trump's chances of getting the conviction overturned on appeal are slim. At the same time, Democrats are going to use this ruling to hammer Trump in the 2026 midterms. You're going to see ads that say, "The president is a convicted felon. Elect a Democratic Congress to hold him accountable." You're going to see debates where Democratic candidates ask their Republican opponents, "Do you think a convicted criminal should be president?" And you're going to see Democrats using this conviction to motivate their base and to persuade independents that Trump is unfit for office. That's going to be a major factor in the midterms, and it could determine control of Congress. Republicans, meanwhile, are going to be in a tough spot. Trump loyalists are going to defend him and attack Judge Merchan, but that's going to make them look like they're defending a criminal. Moderate Republicans are going to try to distance themselves from Trump, but that's going to anger the MAGA base and could cost them in primaries. And the party as a whole is going to be divided and chaotic, which is never a good position heading into an election. Internationally, you're going to see allies continuing to question Trump's credibility and adversaries continuing to test him. European leaders are going to be reluctant to make long-term commitments with a president who might be sentenced to prison or who might not finish his term. China, Russia, and Iran are going to push the boundaries, knowing that Trump is distracted and weakened, and the global perception of American leadership is going to take another hit. And then there's the question of sentencing. Judge Merchan delayed it, but he didn't rule it out. At some point, probably after appellate courts weigh in or after Trump's term ends, there's going to be a sentencing hearing, and that's going to be a media circus. Trump could be sentenced to probation. He could be fined. He could even be sentenced to prison, though that's unlikely while he's president. But whatever the sentence is, it's going to be historic, and it's going to redefine what it means to be president in the 21st century. So here's the bottom line. Judge Juan Merchan just upheld Donald Trump's criminal conviction, and that ruling is a catastrophic blow to Trump's presidency, to his legal strategy, and to his political future. Trump is now governing as a convicted felon, and that is a fact that will follow him for the rest of his presidency and beyond. This ruling destroys Trump's argument that he is immune from prosecution. It gives Democrats a powerful weapon heading into the 2026 midterms. It divides the Republican Party and it undermines Trump's credibility both at home and abroad. Trump is attacking Judge Merchan, calling the ruling corrupt, and vowing to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court. But the legal reality is that his conviction stands, and it's not going away. This is a full-blown crisis for the White House, and it's a crisis that Trump created by committing crimes and then trying to use political power to escape accountability. The next few months are going to be critical. Watch how the appeals process unfolds. Watch how Democrats use this in the midterms. Watch how Republicans respond. Watch how international allies and adversaries react. And watch whether Trump can govern effectively while fighting a legal battle that he is probably going to lose. This is a defining moment for Trump's presidency, and it could very well be the moment when his second term starts to unravel. This story is far from over, and the stakes could not be higher. Keep your eyes on this, because what happens next could reshape American politics for the next decade.